Welcome back to our training series on recruiting the next generation of crime fighters. And thanks again to Safeguard Recruiting for their commitment to providing law enforcement with the resources and tools needed to properly staff our law enforcement agencies and ultimately protect our communities. If you're still with me after the first 3 videos, congratulations. It means you truly are serious and committed about this vital issue. And it also means you put up with me, so I certainly appreciate it. If you haven't watched the videos prior to this, it's important that you do so. You simply won't have the important context of what is to come and what we're going to talk about in today's video and future videos. Today, I want to give you 5 myths about police recruiting. And it's important to know that if you have bought into any of these myths, don't worry about it. I believed them for many years, but I had to come to the conclusion that if I didn't change my thinking, I didn't change my behavior, that nothing was ever going to change in the area of police recruiting. So here we go. Myth number 1 is this: our recruiting efforts are fine and the lack of recruits are not our fault. It's true that some media outlets, some politicians, some groups and individuals, they certainly haven't helped our profession in recent years, but the idea that law enforcement bears no responsibility is ridiculous. Your community relies on you to staff the streets, and you will not have any excuses if you can't do that. So let's own this and let's fix it. Myth number 2, the pendulum will swing back and all will be fine in police recruiting. By the way, none of this will be corrected on its own, so we have to stop waiting for it. There will never be an abundance of willing candidates that just show up to take your test. That was the past, this is the present, and the future will not change unless we change it. You could talk all day about why that is, but talk is just talk. It's time to do the work. Myth number 3, websites and cool videos will not solve your recruiting issues. Listen, I'm a big fan of professional websites and I'm a big fan of those cool tactical videos. That's not recruiting. As I said earlier, that's marketing. Your website's the new front door to your law enforcement agency. Citizens need that, and you need that for transparency and trust. But you will never gain a tremendous traction in recruiting on a website. And the reason is simple. Recruiting is about going and finding the candidates and bringing them to you. Website does none of that. It sits dormant until someone finds it. Actual recruiting is about you finding them, not them finding you. Yes, your website's important to some of that, but it's not everything. And once you understand this, it's a game changer. Myth number 4, your online ad campaign will not solve your recruiting issue. Now, we're a few years into law enforcement spending a ton of money with online campaigns to recruit, and for the most part, I'm gonna tell you this, you're not gonna like it, it's been a complete failure. And I'll tell you why. They are designed to get you clicks and not actual recruits. Listen, I love the idea of leveraging technology for recruiting. And in future videos, I'm gonna discuss that very thing. But hiring a company to place ads on various social media platforms will not work at the level that we need. I don't blame those companies. They're taking advantage of a real problem, but they're also taking advantage of you. Here's how it typically goes. Your recruiter, your human resources department, or your chief, they obtain a budget for online recruiting, cutting edge stuff, right? And they hire an ad company, professionals, and you pay them $10, $20, $100,000 to place ads on various social media sites. Typically, this is going to do one thing for you, and one thing only. You'll get additional traffic to your website. But once again, that's not recruiting. In fact, that's how the company will tell you that they're being successful. They will send you the metrics on the additional traffic to the site or the page being driven to, but traffic means nothing without an application from a candidate. If you're doing this now, you need to know one thing. How many applications and hirings did you make based on the ad? Period. That's it. If the company can't tell you, they're not recruiting. And if you don't know, your money's being wasted. While it's a good thing that social media platforms do not permit advertising that is discriminatory in nature, you also need to know how this limits your ability to recruit diversity and age. I wonder how many of those paid website clicks were from 75-year-old men or 12-year-old girls. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad they're seeing your department, but once again, that's not recruiting, that's marketing, right? Who did you think you were getting, right? So you probably weren't told any of this because a lot of money is being spent with these online marketing firms. And you may be bragging to your bosses at how it's working because you've got more engagement on your Facebook page or social media pages or your website and your online presence is up. But at the end of the day, if you don't get recruits, it's all a charade. Myth number 5, and this one's actually pretty comical. The reason law enforcement recruiting is down is because of wages and benefits. Yeah, you've all heard this one, right? And we've seen this mainly in how our politicians have increased hiring bonuses and salaries in recent years. Now, they could have helped by actually keeping their mouth shut when they were supposed to, without trashing law enforcement when things they didn't know a lot about. But since it's become a political liability to have high crime and less cops, they're starting to write checks now. Now, don't get me wrong. I like money, I like paying benefits, and so do you. Pay is important, and I'll gladly take more of it. But that's not the core issue. It wasn't the issue when I tested with 500 people for 9 jobs 30 years ago, and the pay was one of the lowest in the region. It certainly isn't the issue now. Pay and benefits are a factor, yes, but it's not the driving force causing the recruiting crisis. A recent Momentum survey said this: 40% of workers would quit their job if their employer didn't align with their values. 56% said they would take a pay cut to work with a company that valued them. Study after study routinely places pay and benefits at 4th or 5th place in what matters most to workers. This is actually good news for you, and it should drive your messaging and recruiting. It's not all about pay and benefits, right? This is exactly what the United States military does. They examine what is important to the generation they are recruiting, and they message directly to them. After all, who can forget Be All You Can Be or Army Strong? Now, a lot of resources goes into that, and you can't compete with the millions of dollars spent a year on recruiting that our military heroes do, but you get the point. We need to understand what drives others to a career and focus on that. In the next video, I'm going to give you some of those specifics and much, much more.